I would love to be able to observe animals in their natural habitats, right? I want to see what a mammoth herd moves like. I want to see what they would look like. I want to see interactions among the matriarchs and the other members of the herd. I also really would want to see Neanderthals interacting with Homo sapiens, right? These are our there are so many other species of human that were around at the same time as we were. And just in the last 10 years, we keep adding more of those little branches to the tree of life that we are located on. And how did we interact with one another? How did we know each other? I have Neanderthal DNA, which means, one of my ancestors interacted pretty closely with the Neanderthal, and I want to know what those interactions were like. What was our day-to-day lives like as Paleolithic peoples? How did we interact with the animals and plants in our world? And especially those first peoples that came into a place for the first time. I spent a lot of my time researching what happens when people arrive somewhere for the very first time. And people have been most places on planet Earth for 12,000 years. So even places we think of as pretty pristine or natural have been shaped by humanity for a very long time. But even, having said that, we know that, at some point, and we're pushing that date back all the time with new data, at some point, people walked onto the North American continent for the first time. What motivated those people? Why did they decide to keep going instead of staying in place? What was it like for them to interact with animals and plants that they had never seen before? What were they looking for? What made them think, okay, yeah, this is where we're going to stop? And then some other people said, no, I want to keep going over one more ridge, right? Because as soon as we got here, we spread really quickly across this continent and then into South America, within just a couple thousand years, which if you think about it, that's really fast for a group of people to suddenly adapt to a whole range of different ecosystems and climates. And, to know like, okay, this plant is poisonous, this plant is edible. I mean, there's just so much science happening there, right? So much experimentation and observation and natural history knowledge that's just being gathered. And I'm just really curious, like, what makes people decide to move to, what were their reactions? Like, did they know they were the very first people that had ever seen this place? So maybe one thing I would want to would be some sort of universal translator that would allow me to speak, because we think that people probably had language at this point. And, even Neanderthals had the capability to have language. We don't necessarily know if they spoke, but they had the ability to speak. We can tell that from, the shape of the bones in their throat. So that's something else I would really like to be able to observe. And if they did speak, I would love to be able to know what they were saying and what their interactions with one another were, how they understood their own world. That I think would be really fascinating.